Hello and welcome to the Shipyard. This series is a diary of my attempts to learn 3D modelling in Blender and build a spaceship. And the spaceship that I'm going to build is the Drayman transport from Wing Commander 1. Now if you watched the last episode you will have seen all the references that are available for this ship. And they're fairly limited. Basically you've just got the low resolution sprites that were used in the game engine itself, which is a 3D studio render of the ship from basically every angle but at very low resolution. And then there is a side and a top view that came out of Clawmarks, which was basically the manual for the game. And that's really all the direct reference that's available. Well, since that last episode I've learned some of the basic modelling and geometric tools in Blender, and I've built a very primitive form of the ship in Blender. Let me show you. So we got a couple of cylinders there for the engines, a sort of half cylinder there skewed, which is sort of a mounting pylon for the engines, some sort of superstructure there which supports this, which is the big cargo unit, and then the hull here, which is sort of geometric and blocky. If I look at the top and the side views, you can see that I've actually built it on the views that came out of the manual. Now you can certainly see that the visual fidelity on this model is not high. I mean, this has been built really for two reasons. One is just to get a handle on some of the modelling tools available in the software, but secondly I really wanted to get a feel for this ship as a three-dimensional object that we could turn around, zoom in and out on. So let's just put a few annotations in here. I should be able to do this with the graphics tablet that I've got here by doing things like this. Here we go, let's give this a try. So this is the cargo container. I think this is modular and removable. I think it's probably been like when we get to texturing, which is some way off because we need to add a lot more geometric detail on this. Pretty much all of this is going to have to be remodeled from scratch. But I think once we get to texturing it, we will really make this thing battered. I think that the cargo containers that travel on the back of Draymans, like shipping containers that travel on the back of trucks and on trains and things, have done a lot more miles than the ship. We really do need to add a lot of wear and tear and dents and peeling paintwork and stuff on that thing. We've got these things which I am just going to decide are engines because they look pretty much exactly like you would expect engines to be, underslung under this thing here, which is, I don't know, maybe there's some sort of like hydraulic system here which extends or releases the cargo container on a big pylon or something. Let's call that the mount, the cargo mount. This thing here is quite clearly, now there's a lot of windows on the blueprints. I've just approximated that by just clipping an ellipsoid through there. That's clearly the bridge, and the rest of this here, down to about here, I think this area and this whole area here, that's the remaining sort of habitable part of the ship. Let's just call that the main hull. And there's a few things, turrets, I haven't modelled on here, but essentially there's a turret here, there's one here, one here. I think there's one on the top here, and there's actually on the blueprints there's one here as well, although that, in my opinion, is a terrible place to put a gun turret. I don't think you'd mount it on your removable cargo container. I think it would drive the price up and the practicality down. So that's our ship in its most basic form. One thing we can see here is that it's pretty clear now we have it as a three-dimensional model, is this clearly doesn't land on a planet, right? If we actually go to the side view here, this thing clearly doesn't touch down on a landing pad. It would be sitting on the bottom edge of its cylindrical engines and a turret at the front. Clearly it's not going to support its weight through these things. So I think we can infer with some confidence that this is not a ship that is designed to land on planets. It is probably constructed and spends its entire life in space. Now, I don't know how that helps us directly, but knowing that might affect some design decisions that we make in the future. I wanted to talk a bit about the philosophy of references. We have very limited references here, so you could think that we're going to use every bit of the references that we do have and then build more on that. But I think that's a bad way to do it. In the original game, the ships were built at very low fidelity. They were built in an old DOS version of 3D Studio, and they were rendered out from there. But they didn't have a whole lot of geometry in there. They didn't need to, because they were going to be rendered out to very low resolution sprites. So I think we have to be able to add our own variety to the ships. I think we can put our own spin on things. For example, take this pylon here is very boxy, both on the blueprints here and here, and in the model, the resultant model. But if we want to make that have a curvature, say, then we should be able to do that, I think. Just because the original model looked boxy, that doesn't mean that the Drayman has canonically boxy shapes. Another thing that's really evident looking at the original sprites is how shiny this ship is. In fact, that's the same for all the Confederation ships in the game. Even the Tiger's Claw sprites gleamed and shone like a polished trophy. But in the cutscenes, the Tiger's Claw was clearly not that kind of ship. Hell, internally in the bunk room there are flickering lights and dripping ceilings. So in that case, we really have to put down the shininess of the ships on the sprites as just an overzealous use of the then novel technique of specular highlighting and rendering. The ship is a transport ship, it's Serenity, not an Imperial courier. This thing has to look utilitarian and functional, and also used and worn. So even though we have very limited source material, we're going to use that as a starting point rather than a Bible. We won't and shouldn't be dogmatic about the exact details that are available in the original references. A word on scale, this small cylinder that I've put up the front, that's a 2 meter tall cylinder. So essentially that's the height of a man. I wanted to put that in there so we can get a sense of the height and size and scale of this ship. So this cargo container, for instance, is around the height of a 3 or 4 story building. It's pretty big. But the ship is not as big as it looks on the side view here, where we've got like multiple windows here, 1, 2, 3. It looks as though there's maybe at least 3 decks in this area here, and at least another 4 down here. Well, that can't be true because there's not the space. We can see from the scale here that there is not the space for 3 decks here. That this could be 2 at most. So that clarifies slightly knowing what the scale of this thing is, and selling the scale of this ship is going to be a challenge as we come to build out detail as well. This is a lot bigger than a fighter in Wing Commander, and we really need to show that scale. So the next thing we're going to need to do in this project is to start to recreate sections of this ship at higher fidelity. We'll examine them one at a time and get a sense of what they are there for and what they need to look like, try and bring in some real-world references to give authenticity to the build. And I can't think of a better place to start than this cargo container, because it's the simplest of the components in the ship, really straightforward, just a tapered cuboid. I think that since I'm still so new to this, this is the ideal place to start. So trying to come up with a function-orientated design for the cargo container on the back of the Drayman will be the subject of our next episode. Thanks for watching.